Hi, and welcome to the Live Edge Lumber Girl Show. This episode of the Live Edge Lumber Girl Show comes to you from Tegs Tools, with 2 locations to serve you in Hamilton, one at 1104 Barton Street East, and in the mountain at 1361 Rymel Road East, your go-to store for hard-to-find tools and machinery. If there's anything that I've learned about woodworking, it's that if you haven't upped your sanding skills yet, you need to. I sat down with artist Terry Barnes, talked to him about his sanding skills. He takes it to a whole new level. All right, well, I'm here with Terry Barnes, artist. He works with LiveEdge. He does amazing drawings, and his sanding is like out of this world. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I wanted to know, where did your art, where did it come from? Like, what type of art is it when you're drawing it?
I have a tendency to draw what's called mandalas, very geometrical. They come from a wide range of different influences and whatnot. They started in high school. I saw a teacher do Star of David with the math, teaching us geometry, and I kind of always liked symmetrical patterns. So it started with very basic squares and circles and triangles, and then it grew from there. And I always liked drawing. And then I took a CAD program after high school, and the computer really gave me the freedom to expand on my thoughts and sort of copy and paste different things and grow from there. After that, I got back to drawing with pen and paper. No batteries required, so I could take it wherever I go, whatever I'm doing. If I'm on the bus traveling back and forth to work, and it's just grown and grown from there.
So at what point did you decide that you were going to start putting your art on wood?
Probably like 10 years ago, when people were approaching me when I was either sitting in a restaurant or sitting somewhere for work, and everybody wanted to buy the design right off out of the book. And I'm like, well, I really don't think that it's worth selling off the page because it's not finished yet. It doesn't look presentable. So I've been looking for a way to take it off the page and put it into something that I felt was more valuable, something that I could ask for a decent amount for, and that it was much more presentable. So on the page, to me, it's nice, it looks beautiful, but when I see it in wood now it looks more like a true piece of artwork. There was a lot more thought put into it. It looks much more finished. So it took me a long time to find a company that was willing to work with me to be able to translate my hand drawn stuff into an engraving of some sort, whether it was CNC routing or laser engraving, into the wood.
And tell me about, I know that you've worked with a little bit of epoxy. I know that one piece right in the center there.
There's a few pieces actually.
Yes, that one, yeah, and the one over on the other side. Yeah, so
there's
tell me about that process. What exactly do you do when you put the epoxy into it?
So the one thing that I learned with my designs is that because they're so intricate, I need to finish the piece of wood to my finished level before I do any sort of epoxy work to it. And the idea of marrying the two together was to protect the design, because the design is sometimes so intricate and so fine lined that the laser almost cremates the wood and I lose some of the design. And that's what happened with this piece here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this piece here.
Yes, that's gorgeous.
When that was laser engraved, this was sort of a happy accident where we decided, I have this particular design that was drawn in AutoCAD, and I wanted to laser engrave it onto wood. So out of another happy accident in learning how to translate my artwork into how the laser engraves into the wood, we chose to do this piece, which was much more intricate, much more fine lines and whatnot. And what had happened is the laser didn't leave the design even. It had almost burnt out to a bowl shape, and then it
Oh,
was all very rough. So you couldn't really see most of the design. So what I did is I took a clear epoxy and poured it in, expecting that I could actually see all those imperfections and everything in the design, which I thought was actually beautiful.
uh-huh.
But the because of the dark wood, the epoxy basically turned black.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
It's interesting. It absorbed into the wood, and
Yeah.
then some of the carbon from the burnt wood basically tinted the
Ah.
epoxy. So I
Oh,
actually
okay.
lost the design.
Oh,
So what I did was actually I ended up sanding back over top of the epoxy all the way through the epoxy until I got back to the actual design that you can see it's not exactly perfect in all the different spots. There's still a little bit that's, doesn't show through exactly. But from that, I now use some of the epoxy to protect the design.
okay. Yes. So you do a pour over top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not knowing how it's going to turn out or what it's going to show like.
Yeah.
And then there's this piece here, which is that same design, but it's cut in the positive of it. So
Okay,
that
so you
other
went the
version was the
opposite way.
negative,
Yeah.
and this was the positive. So then I split it. So on the outside edge, I have the computer aided drawing, but in the center is one of my hand drawn pieces that I wanted to marry the two together. So then this is another example of I'm not sure exactly how it's going to turn out, but I
Yeah.
want to see if I can marry the two pieces together. So
Okay.
then I clear coated this in.
Yes.
The epoxy shrunk a little bit, which was natural, and I left it sort of uneven because I don't want it to look exactly perfect. So my designs aren't exactly perfectly symmetrical. Even the computer design has some issues with it, but only I know them.
Yeah.
And so I think it actually works together, right? So
Yeah. Right on.
if I can show you that one again, but
Really
yeah,
neat. Okay. Talk to me about sand. Okay. First of all, I know you work in concrete. Your full-time gig is concrete.
my
And that's,
full-time gig is working for a concrete company
yes.
based out of Concord, Ontario, and they have polished concrete and epoxy division, and that's what I work in. So some of my sanding experience comes from actually polishing concrete,
That's
taking dirty, horrible-looking concrete and actually making it shine to a very, very high shine. So it's almost mirror finish.
right. Right. So talk a bit about that process because I know that there's makers out there that are using concrete with live edge in their tables. So
Yeah. So
talk to me about that. Yeah.
we do a more industrial base, not really residential. We have done some houses where it kind of looks strange having polished concrete throughout your house, but
Very
to each their
modern.
own. That's what they
Yeah.
want. Very modern, not so great in bathrooms or kitchens because it doesn't last so well, and it's like ice. If you get any water on your boots, depending what level you go to. We use big industrial grinders and metal diamonds. So those metal diamonds, depending on what kind of a finish you're looking for in the floor, you change out those different diamonds. And then depending on the hardness of the concrete, almost like with wood, if you have a very hard wood, it might take a little bit longer to sand versus a very soft wood that you don't need to start so low in the grits to get out different things that you're sanding. So we use these big industrial grinders that hook up to big industrial vacuums, and they take care of all the silica dust that's generated from the process. We use different chemical sealers to put on the floor to help harden the concrete to stop it from turning to dust. And then we use polishing diamonds, which look like hockey pucks, and they have different grits and resins to actually help pop the shine and hone the surface of the floor. So I've
Okay.
taken some of that experience in polishing concrete into how I sand my wood. I start, depending on the type of wood, with a low grit and then vary the speed of my sander with a variable speed sander to then get to the level that I want to go to.
That's really cool because I think that there's a lot to sanding when it comes to being a woodworker or anything to do with sanding. The sanding finishing is the most important part of the process. And I know from personal experience that I've seen you take it to the next level.
Yeah. So because I'm producing more artwork, um, and I've learned through the laser engraving process that I need to have my pieces of wood, regardless of the type of wood, I need to have them close to finish or almost finished. So that after the laser engraving, when there's a little bit of burn debris, um, different issues that arise and whatnot, I don't have to jump back to like a 40 grit to deal with those. With the piece of wood finished close to where I want it to be, I tend to like to go to a 3000 grit to get an almost glass finish.
Yes.
I may only have to drop back to a 1200 grit to clean up the burn marks and some of the degree, and then I can pop it right back again without losing some of the design. What can happen, regardless, I don't know, the person I've been working with has been very patient with me. So I really, really appreciate the work that she helps me with. But I can show you in this piece here. I'll come close, you might be able to see.
Yeah.
So at the very top, right through here, in this top part right here, the laser didn't cut almost as deep as the rest of the design.
Yes.
So that's not anything with the program. That has to do with the way that I've drawn the design, and the computer doesn't sense as
Ah,
much of a line there. Doesn't always translate to a proper
I
line.
see. Yeah, I
So
see.
if I hadn't sanded this to an almost perfect finish the way I wanted it, when I go back to do a finish sanding over it, I have a chance to lose the design.
Right. Okay.
Even whether it's epoxied or not, it's just that the line isn't deep enough to withstand any more sanding on top of it.
Right.
So I like to make that almost perfect finish through everything versus something like this one where we started practicing with the design a little bit more and the process of laser engraving to where, depending on the design, actually, we can cut fairly deep into the wood. And then
Yes.
I have room to be able to sand down a little bit more to take care of laser marks, burn marks, depending on the type of the wood, so that I can get an almost perfect even finish all the way across.
Yeah. So how did you explain that then? You did the one drawing, you discovered that because of the whatever that the heaviness of the line, it didn't the laser didn't machine didn't pick up on it. And with this other piece, you overcame that,
Yeah,
right?
so we messed around with some of the settings, and this took us
Okay.
maybe 15 different designs going through them to
Okay.
learn how the computer is tracing my design, because it's not a computer generated design. It doesn't know the exact thickness. The computer information that's required to get a perfect design isn't there. And that's what I kind of like, some of how the designs are now translating into the wood, is that the design isn't perfect, the wood isn't perfect, but depending on how I finish it and whether I add epoxy to it or not, changes the whole look of the design. So
Oh,
it marries the two together.
yeah.
So it's been a learning process of, okay, go ahead and give it a try. And that's where um, this particular design
Yes.
came from, in that it's actually this design.
Right.
This is the positive of it.
Yeah. And the
And
other one's
by
negative?
deleting, pardon me,
And the other one's the negative of it? Or
it is the negative.
oh,
It's the
okay.
exact same design, but there's one line missing.
Okay.
And when we were trying to put this particular design, we had copied it in the computer 4 times to make part of a leaf pattern. And the computer was telling us that there was something wrong, but we didn't understand what the computer was trying to tell us. And I said, so go ahead and give it a try. So instead of it cutting a positive like this, it actually cut it negative four
Okay.
times. So I think it's beautiful. I like it. So then we took this particular design, and I said, okay, let's test it out. Let's let the computer go a little bit deeper. So you can see on that piece the burn residue from the wood and
Yes.
the resin.
Yes.
That shadowing, that's actually from the resin in the wood. That's not the finish of the wood. That's the resin in the wood that's burnt from the heat of the laser.
I see.
On that side, you can see how the different details pop out almost, and how the clear epoxy has allowed the burnt wood underneath to pop in still relief so I can see it.
Right.
So
Okay.
happy accidents, right? It kind of looks a little funky that it's stretched, but this original piece was off of a sheet of paper that I had drawn 8.5 by 11.
Okay.
And so it's been a learning experience that we can take most of my drawn designs and stretch them and contort them to fit the piece of wood or to fit
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah,
piece of
sure.
different design.
Yeah. So you could do the
So
same piece on several different sizes if you wanted to.
on different sizes, and whether we do it a positive or a negative or change different things. So even though I've drawn one design, it has a tendency to come out in different ways depending on the type of wood we put it on, or whether we marry it with different designs, that kind of stuff. So it stopped being so much about pen and paper
Yeah.
versus, okay, now working with a laser engraver, going, okay, here's these different pieces. I want to marry them together and see what comes out of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I get to do, right? Is I get to take my artwork to the next level, and then putting it into the wood takes it up to that much more of a next level.
Right.
So now some of my pieces of artwork are not necessarily one piece. It could be three, four, five pieces that, I've always been sort of sitting there going, I don't know what to do with them. I've managed to put them together onto one larger piece of wood, and now it becomes a design of where I thought it should be.
Okay. Okay. That's really interesting. I don't have an artist mind, so being creative like that, it's like I'm fascinated. And so, okay, so tell us about like when you're getting ready to laser. What grit have do you usually go to before? Are you going right to the 3000 grit and then lasering it?
Generally, I've taken it right to the 3000 grit so that areas that I hope are finished all across, depending on where the design's going to sit inside the piece of wood or whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't have to go back over everything. I can
Yes.
just touch up certain
I
parts over
see.
the design,
Yeah.
and then I'm good to go.
Okay. So
Yeah.
talk to us about your how you sand. Like what's your process? Where do you start, and what's your method like? Can you explain that?
Depending depending on the piece of wood, the size of the piece of wood, I can get some pieces that are actually very, very rough. They've been offcuts, so they've still got all the chainsaw marks, the rough,
Yes.
processing cuts and whatnot. And I will start at a 40 grit and take
Yeah.
that all the way down on like a turbo mode on my sander,
Okay.
um, and basically get that as smooth as possible. And then I'll take that same grit, switch it back into an orbital sander, and then get rid of my sanding marks. So, what's important for me is not necessarily the higher grits, it's the starting grits that are really important to me. If I don't
Okay.
do well at the 40s and 80s, uh, let's even say between 40s and 200s, that I'm
Okay.
not going to achieve the goal that I'm looking for at even the 1500s when I get
Okay.
up to that high. So I've seen a lot of people talk on YouTube about the different sanders, the different methods, and whatnot. And I find for me, what works best is literally slowing down the process and achieving what I expect to achieve at the earlier grits versus trying to then achieve that at the higher grits. So if I take my time between 40 and 100, I
Yeah.
can actually speed up the process between 200 to 600. And then I'm just cruising from there. That instead of it taking me 30 minutes to go through a piece of wood,
Yeah.
it only takes me 5 or 6 minutes per grit going through that area because I can just glide back and forth
Right.
and I have my finish. I don't start seeing drum sander lines that were
Yes.
there in the piece of wood that they've been there since the 40 grit, but I didn't notice them until
Yeah.
the resin in the wood actually starts polishing and
Yeah.
sanding up to a higher grit.
I've noticed that in some of my charcuterie boards after I put the oil on. I look at it and I think, oh, I sanded it to 400, but then I look at it and I say, I can see waves like
Yeah, you
from
can
the,
see waves where the sander has stopped, right?
Right.
Where the piece of wood has gotten stuck and it's sat there for
Yeah.
a little too long and all of that. And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't see that till 600 to 800 grit. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh no, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because depending on the design that I have going on there, it may accent the design or it may hide from the design.
Right.
So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
focus back on the earlier grits, maybe not making sure that the piece is perfectly flat level, but that I
Right.
don't see any scratches or things that are going to accentuate after I seal the piece, or if I put epoxy onto it, that it's going to make it pop.
So do you have issues when that happens where if there's any dips with the laser, does that affect the
Yeah,
depth as
actually,
well?
let me see if I can show you on this piece.
Yeah, sure.
So this piece right here, this is a combination of 4 different designs. This is one design here, one iteration of it, which is actually expanded. This is that leaf design that I had
Yes.
shown you.
Yep.
These pieces here, this is the happy accident where we had
Yeah.
deleted the one design to try and fix it. And this is what it was supposed to look like, but it actually cut negative on that one. And I said, so let it go. Let's let it see what happens. So this is where the design didn't cut all the
Oh,
way through
yeah.
perfectly,
Uh-huh.
but the whole board was sort of cupped slightly. So that was probably where the laser was too far away from the piece of wood.
Ah, I see.
And then even in when I had clear epoxied it, some of it had sanded and some of it didn't sand. So you
Okay.
can see kind of on this side where with the soft pad on the sander, I've
Yeah.
got some of it to go back white, but some of it doesn't because it's still too deep. Yeah, so this is where I have to stop sanding at a certain point because even though I had sanded this to 2000 grit, back, I actually started losing the design, even though I had epoxied this. So I had flood coated this whole piece to protect it when I was
Yeah.
sanding it,
Yeah.
get it back, and I actually started losing some of the design, even though I was at a higher grit. You can kind of see down at this point here that it's almost completely disappeared from
I
the
see.
original
Yeah. Yeah.
design.
I don't notice these things until you point them out.
So, well, because I know what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. What
that
inspired you that on that last piece there? That for the first section. What inspired you to draw that? What is that to you? This to me, when I'm looking at it, it reminds me of like a horse. Or,
a horse.
yeah, like everybody's gonna see something different, right? But to like, what inspired? What is that? Is it just a design that you came from your
That
great?
design, I refer to it as
Yes,
Fallen Angel. Hold on.
Oh, that's fallen angel. Okay,
That's
yes,
Fallen Angel. So
okay. So those are wings.
this is the design wing,
Yes.
which
Okay.
is here. If we look at this one,
Yeah.
see, I call that one Twisted Wings.
Okay. Yes.
Can you see that one? Because that is the wing design.
Yes.
And I liked it in that iteration. So this is one drawn piece. This is one design.
Yep.
This is another design.
Okay.
And we kind of shrunk them down to fit onto the piece of wood and kind of put it together. So I liked this design, but I didn't like the design that I had put into the center.
Okay.
So that's why we ended up coming up with this piece and putting this design here that has sort of an eye in the center of it.
Uh-huh.
This was another design that was supposed to be part of 2 designs, kind of like wing, but I
Yes.
didn't like it so much. And then we kind of placed this all onto the computer. So I don't actually have a drawing of this. This is all different parts of this design
I
that we
see.
put together in the computer and then
Yeah.
laser engraved it. So
Right.
that design there, wing, is
So
now
yeah.
back. So that is a printed copy, which I printed as poster,
Okay.
and then I've continued adding to it.
Ah,
So
okay.
so most of this detail that you see here is all stuff that I've drawn in after the fact, after it was printed like that. So that's not, um, I don't have like an 8.5 by 11 of that. I actually have just that design.
Ah,
That's the only copy that I have of that.
okay.
So maybe
That's
if I
pretty
do
cool.
this,
Yeah, then I can see it, yeah. But
can
then
you
I
see
can
the
see all
two?
the extra stuff you've added in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the design doesn't always stay exactly the same. I sometimes like to expand and grow on the design.
Yeah, right on. Beautiful. So is your work for sale?
Not yet. I'm working on a few pieces that I'd like to put for sale.
Yeah.
Um, People have been showing more and more interest, but the downside for me has been like some of the other makers that you've interviewed in pricing their pieces, that some people don't respect the amount of time and effort that you've put into producing a piece. And I think like even some of these poster sizes, I've had a few people look at me and they've offered me $5 for them, but it
Uh,
cost me $40 to print it. It's well, sorry, no, I can't do
yeah.
that.
No, no.
Just
Yeah.
regardless of the time and the effort that goes into drawing a design, which can take 2 hours up to a year or more, because
Oh,
the
yeah.
design just doesn't seem complete.
Yeah.
And that's probably like this one back here. I called it Ultimate Lace. That original design, even though I drew it in a computer, I didn't just copy, like make a pie shape and copy that all around. Each of those lines that you see there are an individual piece of the design. So I made a circle. Okay, I like that circle. I've copied the circle around, or I've made a different piece of shape, or other designs that I was working on. I then copied them into that, cut out the parts that I don't like, and then kind of put it together to create the design.
Right.
So even when I was working with the computer, I don't know what the end goal is, but I will start either from the outside and work my way in, or start from the inside and work my way out. And it doesn't always have to be square, it doesn't always have to be round. And that's what
Yeah.
some of these other designs have come from, is putting pieces together. So I've had people offer me $200 for some of my artwork,
Yeah.
versus $5 to $10 for some of the
Yeah.
stuff that I've put a lot of effort into. And I'm just I
Yeah.
don't know. But now being able to marry my artwork into the live edge wood and see a much more finished product, something that looks much more artistic, whether it has epoxy in it or not,
Yeah.
that to me, now I can say that yes, I feel more comfortable saying, okay, this is a much more piece of artwork versus than what I see it in as a piece of paper. So I hope that I can earn the buyer's respect, that um, it's worth a lot more than $5,
Right.
regardless
For
of the amount
sure.
of time that I've put
Yeah.
into sanding it and finishing it.
Yeah.
It's
It's
much
the
more
whole process.
valued. It's
Yeah.
the whole process, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's just like any maker that's doing for making furniture. It's the same thing, right? The people don't want to, they want IKEA prices, but they have no idea of the amount of effort, and even just from
yeah,
making it in your mind, planning it, at that point, and having that knowledge is value, and then
yeah.
taking it and turning it into something is more value. So yeah, getting
But
that
considering I'm
price.
more interested in the one-off pieces, that I'm not planning on making 50 copies of this one design, because I'm not
Exactly.
going to find 50 pieces of the exact
Yeah.
same piece of wood,
Right.
right? So I could
Yeah.
probably get the price down if I had my own laser engraver, which is something I'd like to invest in.
Right.
Still, mass producing something isn't as
Yeah.
enjoyable as producing the individual piece and seeing how it turns out, right?
Yes.
So
Well, you're an artist. You're not out to mass produce, right?
no, definitely not
Yeah,
out to mass
yeah,
produce.
you
Not with the process that I go through for some of the stuff. So
right, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, well, we have been talking about bringing some of your stuff into my showroom, so I hope that happens in
I absolutely,
2021.
yes, I certainly hope so. It would be very nice.
Yeah,
So
so people will
I've
know where to come and get it.
I've been on job sites and had people approach me, because I've been talking to other artists and whatnot about how they um, sell their artwork, or different galleries that are open to people that are not well known and stuff over the GTA area.
Yes,
And that's kind of interesting, but it's still scary to start that process of taking everything to go show people what I do, because a picture doesn't always do it justice, as we've
right.
talked
Yeah.
sometimes, right? So
Uh-huh.
uh, putting everything into my vehicle and driving can be a couple 100 pounds depending on the sizes of pieces of wood that I have, right? So yeah,
I
it's
have
not
problems
it's
with
not
that.
a
My products too. A lot of weight.
yeah,
Make
it
sure my
takes a lot
van
of
can
weight.
hold it.
Exactly, right? So um selling a piece of paper versus selling a piece of wood, the design changes from what you see on the paper versus what you get in the wood. And that's what really meeting Christina from Workshop Supply in Embro.
Yes.
Uh, she was the one that actually helped me develop the process of lasering into the wood.
Okay.
So when I really started looking into sanding wood and taking my designs into wood, it was Workshop Supply, Christina at Workshop Supply, that someone said to me, you know what? Go check her out. It's a bit of a drive from Kitchener, but I think she can do what you're looking for. So when there's been all these maker markets and Christmas markets and whatnot, and people will talk about being able to do custom laser engraving,
Yes.
one of the holdbacks that I've had is, well, do you have it in specific files? I'm like, no, I have it in my book. So
Okay.
can you
Yes.
not just take the book and go do like take a picture of it and that's it? That's what I hear you can do.
Yeah.
And everybody's been, no, I don't have the time to do that. And it's not going
Oh.
to turn out the way you want it. And there's been a lot of pushback from
Oh.
people who have the abilities, but they're not interested in taking the time. So
Okay.
when I went to Workshop Supply, I said, so, I was already pretty much defeated on the whole process and whatnot. And Christina said, well, just give me a picture. And
Yeah.
so I emailed her a picture, and in 5 minutes, she had a little piece of scrap wood laser engraved with ultimate lace. I'm like, so how difficult is that? Everybody's been telling me no,
Yeah.
they can't do it. It's too intricate. You're not going to get it. I'm like, but I want to do artwork. I want to do my designs, and I don't care how it turns out. It's a learning process of whether
Yes.
it's right or wrong, and that doesn't matter. As we've seen, some of the pieces, they're not exactly perfect, but that's what I'm going for. That's what I want. She goes, yeah, no problem. I can do that. So since then, it's been,
Yeah.
a happy accident getting to meet her and
Yes.
translating the designs into what I want to do, which has been a difficult process of finding companies that are willing to do the one off,
Yeah.
right? Not doing the mass production where they're earning a lot more money than I'm earning off of it by doing the
Yes.
pieces. I've been able to take the
Yeah.
one piece, the two pieces, the five pieces to her, leave them over a few days, and then go see how it turns out.
Yes.
Perfect, great. You know
Right.
what? Not everything laser engraves perfectly, and that's part of how my artwork doesn't always work out to the laser engraving process. But then I know I need to change something in the design. I need to go back. I need to make a line thicker.
Yes.
So I
Okay.
still end up with something that I know.
Yeah.
I learn from the process as we're both learning through everything, and we get to have something that works. So
Yes.
the design may not be the whole entire piece of the wood, it may be just a small portion of the wood, uh, but we get to mess with everything, and that's what I really enjoy is seeing
Yeah. That's really
the
cool.
parts come out afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So Christine, it's Christine. She's been she does all the lasering. How big of a laser machine does she have?
the maximum laser engraving size she can do is 24 by 36. So that's the actual footprint of the laser engraver. So I've seen companies like Glowforge, um, Dremel, CNC companies that can put on a low watt laser onto their CNC machines,
Okay, yes.
but it doesn't cut as deep as what she can get to. So that's the other learning process that I went through,
Yes.
is knowing that I need something fairly powerful to be able to cut deep enough so that when I sand the piece of wood back, I don't lose the design,
Okay.
right?
So
So
it's
it
okay.
definitely cuts deep enough into the
Yes.
wood that when I finish sand it, it doesn't disappear when I've done that.
So it's not every laser machine is able to necessarily cut as deep depending on.
As I would like, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay. So you're wanting it deeper than say putting a family name on a charcuterie board. You're going way deeper than that.
I'm going 5 millimeters or more deep
Okay.
into it. And then I found from that process, it has a tendency to darken the wood so
Yeah.
that if I do a clear epoxy or a tinted epoxy, it's got some depth to it so that I
Yes.
can go with epoxy and then I don't sand away all the epoxy or sand away the whole design.
Right. Right. Okay.
So
Okay.
here, let's see if we can show you this. This is one of the pieces I was talking about where we did a trial piece. It's almost 36 inches by about 20 inches wide to
Yeah.
across the whole piece.
Yeah.
And you can see we've actually gone quite deep into the
Yeah.
piece of
That
wood.
is deep. Yes. Okay.
So the whole design survived through the process. I didn't lose anything.
That
It
is
didn't really
amazing.
cremate.
That
So
negative
this
one.
is, yeah, so this is the negative design that
Yeah.
I showed you on that other piece.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then this is
Okay.
the positive.
You're right about that.
And
Now that I see the negative without so much black in it, I can
yeah,
see, holy moly, that's amazing the way that came out.
so this piece was all finished right to 3000. And I just recently went back and gave it a light sanding to clean up the overburn marks
Yeah.
from the laser. And I plan on cleaning it all out, getting all the dust out from inside. And then I'm probably going to clear coat over top of this piece to help protect everything.
Yeah.
And then inset here, I actually want to inset some jewels
Okay. Okay.
into the different spots.
Nice. Oh,
Like
that's
this piece
pretty.
here,
That's really pretty. Well, I'm just big on the
it's
I'm big on the cookie too because it's got lots of character.
yeah, and that's Orange Assange. That's one of the
Okay.
pieces that I had
Yes,
shown you that actually
that's
turned out
right.
like glass.
Yes.
So this piece isn't finished to 3000. That's only 320.
Okay.
And I went back to try and start sanding it to get it back up again. But the
Yeah.
piece is so lightly engraved that I'm going to lose the
Oh,
design. You can
okay.
see in here. So I'm probably going to sand that completely right off and
Oh,
then laser
redo it?
engrave the design with different settings.
Okay. Did you
Sorry, go
just do
ahead.
that recently? That one there? Did you just do that one?
No, that one's done a while ago.
Okay.
Um, but I just recently finished that one. So I can't decide if I'm going to epoxy in the whole piece
Yeah.
or if I'm
Right.
going to just leave it as is.
Right. Back up a bit so we can see the whole piece.
Then I also have this one. I don't know if you can see this one.
Yeah. What is that?
That's actually aluminum oven tray liner.
Oh.
This is drawing that I did in the computer. And
Yeah.
then in my adventure to try and take the drawn design and turn it into something that I feel is much more valuable, I actually hand embossed this into the aluminum sheet.
Oh,
So
wow.
I took the computer printed design, put it
Yeah.
on the aluminum sheet, and then took a pen that has like a ball end on it, and I
Yes.
hand traced it, pressing it into the aluminum.
Oh, okay. Have you
So
thought
I'd
about
like to see.
are you gonna put epoxy in that
I'm gonna
or
have to actually protect it
yeah.
because it's just so thin. Um,
Would you
but
use a
I'm
color?
afraid.
Like, would you add a color to that?
I don't know. I kind of want to leave it as is. I've
Okay.
seen some uh, antiquing methods to
Oh,
actually
yes.
get the different lines inside to sort of pop,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's just so thin. I can't mess with it. So I'd have to coat the
Uh,
back of it with epoxy to protect it before I do
yes.
anything on the front.
I see. Okay. So that would probably be the plan then. No, that's
This
the
piece
piece you
here,
brought to my shop, right? That
yeah,
one?
that's the
I love
piece.
that
Yeah.
piece. That's so pretty.
So this is one of the examples of where messing with the settings and working with someone that has the patience to listen to what I want to that through our process of how we've been working, we've been able to take this intricate hand design and actually change the settings on the laser so that we can get deep enough. It's actually fairly deep in there that I can go back and I can sand. And if I want to, I
Yeah.
can clear epoxy or do something on top of it. And I'm not going to damage it because I even have this piece here, which was part of the learning process of taking the computer drawn design, but only a picture of it and laser engraving it into the wood, that it is actually fairly deep into it, but we still retained the whole perfect outline of the design.
Yes. Very nice.
this one
Wow,
is
that's
the
cool.
original design.
Where is that on wood? Where is that one?
I don't have this exact piece,
Okay.
but I have this where I
Yeah.
expanded that piece. So this is the second, and then that is this piece right
Ah,
up
that
here.
piece. Okay. And you actually stretched that one, didn't you?
We did
Oh,
stretch that
yeah.
one a little
Okay, I
bit to
could see
fit the
that it's
board.
stretched. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. This is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge. So, when it comes to sanding, the number one rule is between 40 and 100. That's where you really need to concentrate on getting
You really need to
your
concentrate
wood
on
cleaned up.
getting your board cleaned up, getting it to where you want it to
Yeah.
be,
Okay.
and don't rush.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people in different videos, instructional videos, and they're moving their sander back and forth very, very fast. They're
Yeah.
staying with only with the grain of wood. And I found from some of my polishing concrete is that I actually need to listen to what the sander is telling me. So if the piece is very rough or uneven, I need to slow down, either turn the speed of the sander down, decrease pressure, or increase pressure on how hard I'm pushing down, and keeping it as level as possible to the surface of the piece of wood.
Yeah.
So some pieces I may run 40 grit at full speed on the sander.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
on other pieces, I may actually run it almost at a dead slow because I'm trying to remove a lot of wood. It's
Okay.
really, really uneven.
I
So
see.
I
Yes.
listen to what the sander is telling me
See. Okay.
versus what my knowledge is, because one piece of wood may run perfectly
Yeah.
with the same process that I go to, and then the next piece of wood,
Yeah.
because it's softer or harder
Yeah.
than the piece I did previously, I may have to change my tactics.
I
So it
see.
doesn't always stay consistent with every piece of wood that I use.
Okay. So don't necessarily be running your sander at the same speed all the time. Sometimes you need to experiment and see if what sort of what you're going to get if you turn it up or turn it down. And
Exactly. So if you've
yeah.
got a very rough piece and it's very unsettled, you may need to run that at one.
Yes.
So as you get through maybe 40s to 100s, you've run it at one over your whole piece.
Yeah.
And then from once you have it nice and level or to the consistency that you want, you don't see a lot of scratches from the previous grit.
Yeah.
Now you can jump that up to a 3 or 4, and then 5 and 6, depending on the speed of your sander, for the much higher grits. So that's the way I
Okay.
probably go, is I actually from 40 to 100,
Yeah.
I'm running between 1 and 2.
Right.
From 2 to 600, I'm between 4 and 5.
Okay.
And then for the higher grits between 800 to 3000, I'm running at full speed.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the speed that I'm moving the sander over the piece of wood changes between the grits. So when I get to the higher grits, I actually slow down a little bit more. I don't
Yeah.
travel as fast because I allow the sander itself and the sandpaper to do its job. So I'm not pushing a lot of force onto the piece of wood. I'm leaving the machine tell me if it needs more pressure or less pressure, so that I
Okay.
don't end up with swirl marks and
Yes.
extra scratch marks, which can happen, and even at the higher grits, that you
Yes.
don't notice until you go to put a finish on it. I've
Yeah.
noticed that a couple times when I've even put on a beeswax finish onto the board, and I
Yeah.
see these swirl marks, and it's because I was traveling too fast or too slow, depending on the
Okay.
type of wood.
Yeah. And this, I guess if you wanted to test that, can you like I know about spraying the water in between. You don't do that. I believe you said you don't do that because you're going up to such a high grit. You don't really deal with the spraying the water to lift the
No,
grains and all that. But if you're at a point where if you're finished sanding, if you spray it with water, will that show the swirls? Do you think?
I actually found a couple times it's actually undone everything that I've done.
Oh, okay.
So
So
yeah,
you don't do
because
the water.
the wood is kiln dried,
Yeah.
it'll actually absorb in the water and undo the polish that I was trying to go for.
Okay.
So what I found important for me is actually having a microfiber cloth in between the grits,
Oh,
dusting off the piece of wood between the grits. So that's what
okay.
I'll actually do to remove the dust that's on the surface
Ah, okay.
that my vacuum hasn't picked up. So
Right.
I
So I guess
went
that
with
could
one of the
scratch it, right?
vacuums with wood, not
Maybe.
necessarily
Yeah.
scratch it, but I find I get a different finish. It doesn't bog up in the sandpaper as much.
Right.
So my sandpaper will go a much further distance than I found if I don't actually um, if I don't clean off the wood. So I started with just a small 5-inch Bosch hand palm sander,
Yes.
and that's actually wonderful. It's been able to get me as far as I wanted to. Then finding the different higher grits of sandpaper, which is what I was looking for. So practicing with the speeds and the different finishes on the wood,
Yeah.
I found cleaning off the wood with dry cloth
Okay.
much better than actually spraying it with water and
Okay.
trying to go back and
I could
continue
give that a
sanding
whirl.
after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know one question that everybody's gonna be wondering. Where do you get your sandpaper? So I know you have a couple of places. Maybe you could mention them, and then people can do their own
I
research.
actually now almost primarily get most of my sandpaper on Amazon, and
Okay.
that came out from a need of I was doing a charcuterie board for somebody, and Home Depot didn't have Lowe's, Rona, Home Depot, Home Hardware,
Yeah.
the wood shops, Lee Valley, all those places looked at me like I was a complete insane idiot because I wanted a higher grit sandpaper. Well, you don't need that. That's ridiculous. I'm like, but
Yeah. I've
I
heard
know it's
that people say that.
available.
Yeah.
Hey, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
But
Sure.
so I actually went on Amazon and found a company that had sandpaper into the higher grits. It wasn't overly expensive, so I figured I would give it a try. I'm not one about reading most reviews online. If it works for me, then it works. If it doesn't work. So if I need lower grits up to about 400,
Yeah.
I will go to Home Depot, Lee Valley, and some of the other
Yes.
places. But if I need the higher grits, I've unfortunately been buying them off Amazon so that I can get
Yes.
the grits that I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
you can't just find a 3,000 grit just anywhere.
you certainly, yeah, it may be available,
Yes.
but I found for my immediate needs, it's turned to the internet to get what I need so it can be delivered, especially in these strange times.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
it's Most stores will say, well, we can order it in for you, but it's not always 2 3 weeks out, which is okay, but I need it today kind of
Yeah.
thing. So
Sure. Sure.
that doesn't always work, right?
Right. Okay. So you recommend people looking for sandpaper, a good place to look is on Amazon.
Yeah, and one of the companies I've been using was Tiger Shark Abrasives.
Okay.
So
Tiger
I
Shark
actually found them
abrasives.
pretty good. They uh, You get what you pay for kind of thing, right? So
Sure.
if you're looking for the cheap option that you don't need it to last very long, then that's fine.
Yeah.
I certainly don't mind spending a little extra money to making sure that it lasts a long time.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that.
sandpaper is almost the same thing. I did buy some of the cheaper versions. No, it comes with 300 pieces, 20 grits each, and it
Oh,
cost me
yes.
$30.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't even last me 10 seconds and the fell off the back of the paper,
Oh.
or I went onto one piece of wood and like there was no grit left to the sandpaper after even
Yeah.
doing 2 3 grits over a square foot area, and
Yes.
they're gone. Like,
Okay.
so that doesn't
Yeah,
make it
that's
worth it for
frustrating
me,
because you don't
right?
want to you don't want to have to keep changing the paper constantly, right?
No,
Yeah.
not especially when you're doing a large piece. Just because my limited size right now because of laser engraving is 24 by 36 doesn't mean that I'm always going to stick to pieces that size. I may inlay some designs into a larger piece.
Yes.
So I can work on huge tables, but I need to make sure that what I'm doing is going to last me that entire space. I don't want to have to spend $300-400 in cheap sandpaper versus spending excuse me, another $150, and I only use 2 3 pieces of sandpaper to get me through to where I want to go,
Yes.
right?
Right
That's
on.
what I found is finding the sandpaper that works best for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing my research myself, and I continue to research. So it will come to me. I know it will.
Yeah,
I definitely want to be. I'm picky about the sandpaper part of it, right? Yeah,
yeah,
I've come to realize how important it is.
because you can achieve the same thing that I achieve with different sandpapers. Excuse me, with different sandpapers, but Some of it comes to skill and technique, and then some of it actually comes from the sandpaper itself.
Yes.
If you have a
Okay.
decent quality sandpaper, that changes the outlook and the finish
Yes.
of the piece that you're going for. I mean, and a lot of people look at me like I'm nuts because I want to sand a piece of wood up to a 3000 grit. But then people don't believe me that I didn't put epoxy or some kind of
Yeah.
a monocoat finish on the piece to get it looking like glass.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have one because I got lucky. You taught me, and I did that charcuterie board, and it's like so. It looks like it has a finish on it. It's amazing.
And
I want to
isn't
do
that a
more of
wonderful
that.
piece?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
all natural piece. Yeah, my
it's all
masterpiece.
natural. There's
I'm calling it the masterpiece, right?
now you're not going to want to sell that piece though, right?
It's
So,
mine. It's mine. I'm keeping
yeah.
it for now, anyways, till I get more 3000 grit sandpaper, and then I'll maybe make a few more.
Which has been difficult even for me. So I've gone back to the same seller that I've been looking
Yeah,
for, and they stopped offering above 2,500.
Kling Spore. Yeah, Kling Spore. They have US. There's a US one and a Canadian one on Instagram that you can go to, and I was checking them out, and they seem to have some good options that I just haven't had time to really finish my research with them. They even started following me on Instagram, so it's good.
Oh,
Maybe
nice.
I'll get a deal. Maybe I'll get a sponsorship.
That would be awesome.
That would be right on.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So this has been awesome, Terry. I really enjoyed this. I'm so glad that we decided to do this on the spur of a moment, sort of thing. And
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it.
yeah, yeah. And I know everybody's going to enjoy this so much. So if somebody wants to reach out to you to possibly commission you for some work, what's your Instagram handle?
Fluffy Canadian, actually. FluffyCDN.
Right
You
on.
can see some of my artwork and most of my woodwork on there, and some of my cooking, actually. So
Yes, yeah.
it's not
I know
too.
you're an awesome cook. Oh my God. And I got invited for supper. I think I'm going to be coming over soon.
Sure, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I just did beef and barley soup, which I actually cooked the
Oh,
beef on my Traeger smoker, put that all together into soup with some of the
is
leftovers,
that
and
what you
that
said
turned
you were
out
going to bring over?
fantastic.
Is
Yeah,
that the one?
that's what I'm going to
Oh,
bring over for you.
that's the one you're going to bring
Yeah.
over later today.
Yes.
Right on.
Yeah. So you get to try
Yeah.
some of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So one last thing is what's the best way to get in touch with you? Do you prefer email or just through Instagram or
I can do email and I can do Instagram. Both are pretty
email?
good. So my email would be
Yeah.
tbarnes1884@gmail.com.
That's awesome.
And
Okay.
message me on Instagram if you want. Go ahead
Yeah.
and give me a follow. Like
Yes.
I said, it's not any one particular thing that's on my Instagram,
Yeah.
but I like showing all my artwork, whether
Yeah.
I've drawn or if I'm sitting in a hotel because I got to wait somewhere. So
Yeah.
I just
For
pull
work.
out the
Yeah.
book and start drawing, yeah, for work. And just constantly do everything that's on there. So yeah, it's not just art, not just
Yeah.
woodworking. It's a bit of all of me. So
Yeah. Right on. Okay. All right, Terry. I'll see you later.
okay, perfect. Talk
Okay.
to you soon.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed watching, be sure to click like and subscribe and hit the notifications bell to stay in the loop. If you have any questions, or if you would like to be featured on the Live Edge Lumber Girl show, leave a comment below. Until next time.